Well, welcome to our prelude to Easter week. This is an incredible week that you're going to experience in this most holy of times as we look forward to Maundy Thursday and to Good Friday, and then on Sunday to Easter Sunday, the day of resurrection. Hope you're going to enjoy it with us as we go through this celebration of the death of Christ, but more importantly, his resurrection. There's a verse in the Bible in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 that says this: God made him, talking about Christ, who knew no sin, to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God. Think about this. Jesus was our substitute for the penalty of sin that we should have gone through. You and I are the one that sinned. Jesus never sinned. He was perfect. He never committed any atrocity against God, even a minor one. He was a sinless, perfect being, God, man. But God laid on him all of our sins. He became our substitute. Now, this doesn't mean he lost any of his power, or that he separated himself from being the Son of God, or that he was no longer a member of the Trinity, or that somehow he separated his divine and his human side. Jesus Christ lived and breathed and did miracles and healed and preached. That same Jesus died on the cross for our sins, your and my sins. He was our substitute. He's our substitute even today, so that when you and I sin, Jesus is still our substitute. Sometimes the devil will try to convince us, oh, you sinned again in that same area. How could Jesus ever forgive you? You've fallen again in that same area. It's the 921st time you've sinned in that area. How could God ever turn away from your sin? But every time you sin, Jesus is your substitute. Now, this doesn't mean that we sin with glib, or that we just sin because we can get by with it, or we know that the penalty is going to be wiped away. There ought to be a holiness in our attitude towards God that says, I don't want to sin. I choose not to sin because of God's holiness. But what this verse is saying, folks, is that Jesus is our substitute. So on the cross, this week, all this week, remember, Jesus is your substitute. Yesterday's sins, for today's sins, and for every sin you commit in the future. He is your substitute. That's the truth you need to root your heart in. Jesus is my substitute. God made him not to be sin, but to accept my sin in payment for the gross nature of my sinful nature. And so, folks, today we can celebrate because we are free from the penalty of sin. We are free from the power of sin. We still sin, but now we have an advocate standing at the right hand of God the Father, advocating for our forgiveness, for the release of the sin's judgment against our life. That is something to celebrate. And so you can lift your head high. You can walk with confidence. You don't have to be downcast. You can live in joy and peace because God has become your substitute through Christ for all your sin. Man, live in the holiness and purity and joy of God today.